Here are my thoughts on the Mark 7.5 GTI Performance Pack, which I actually drove last week, and yeah, it was fantastic. It's actually a brilliant day because I drove a Mark 7.5 GTI TCR as well, so I had a bit of a back-to-back drive. Now, it was really great to have this car on the channel. It's a 6-speed manual, 3-door, and I suppose technically out of all the first drives I'd done, this was the least powerful and maybe the least special car, I suppose. But that didn't take away how great the car was, and I think that's what surprised me the most. Now, I'll leave in the description my first drive, which you can sort of see a little bit on screen here, and a Q&A I had with the owner, which I do recommend checking out. But I'm basically just going to talk to you about basically a week later how I kind of found it. And I suppose straight away getting into it, the one thing I noticed the most was just how much more comfortable and compliant it was, the suspension. For me personally, it was probably a little bit too soft, which is I guess a great thing really. This car ran 18-inch wheels and it did not have dynamic chassis control, which I have found is brilliant. So potentially going to the 19-inch wheels, I don't think would affect too much. And potentially you get maybe the better looks, and maybe it can be a bit more dynamic because you get lesser profile in the tyre. So that's always good to be a bit versatile. The 6-speed manual gearbox felt really good. 245 brake horsepower in these cars, so it's not massive. It's enough for a front-wheel drive car. They've got really clever tricks, sort of like, I believe it's like an e-diff. It might even be an actual proper mechanical slippy diff, I'm not 100% sure. But the front end felt really good. And over the bumpy roads that we were on, the car was very settled and very easy to drive. You definitely don't get sort of like the cracks and the bangs, if that makes sense, out of the exhaust, even compared to my Mark 7 Golf R, which does burble every now and then on the overrun. It doesn't do that, but it does make a good noise. And actually, if you watch my first drive, there's a bit where I just pull out of a junction and someone actually looks behind as they see the car go, because on the outside, and that's what I found as well, these cars sound brilliant. Same with my car, same with what you find in the Mark 8 Golf R or the Club Sports or anything basically. They sound a lot better on the inside because these Golfs are so well insulated and refined. As a driver with all the windows shut, you don't get that full experience. You get a bit of sound pumped through your speakers basically, just to try and give you a bit more feel. I think that's quite a good thing, and it did sound good from the outside, and actually the exhaust did sound fantastic, so I've got nothing wrong with that. And this is, bear in mind, a stock 3-door manual base car with the performance pack. The thing that I liked, and actually this is the bit where the guy looked behind, I thought he was looking at the car personally for the noise. I found that another big point was the brakes. Now, because this was a performance pack, you actually get bigger front discs. I'm not sure if the rear discs get bigger, but certainly the fronts do. And they actually match what you get on my Mark 7 Golf R. But of course, being a GTI, not having the Haldex 4-wheel drive system, it does weigh sort of around 70, 80 kilos less. That's generally what it is. It's a decent chunk. It's a noticeable chunk, a person basically's weight off the car. And because of that, it has stronger brakes. Simple as that. You've got less car to stop. It's pretty simple, which is great. They gave you a lot of confidence in this car, and it enabled you to actually, what I quite like is you can keep the momentum really well, because yes, up some of the hills it's not going to have as much shove as a 300 brake horsepower 4-wheel drive R, or even the Club Sports or the GTIs I've driven, but it's quick enough. And I guess the thing is, because it's much more refined, you don't get the pops and bangs, you don't feel like you're going as fast, but in actual fact, you look down at the speedo, you are basically just going just as fast. You can basically go full throttle, whereas in the other cars, even the TCR, which had 290 horsepower, I'm sort of not full throttle. I'm not really giving it. And actually, I spent 3 hours in that car in a performance pack, which I'm going to share next week in sort of like a POV drive and my thoughts on that. There was only a few occasions where I was sort of flat out, to be honest with you. And yeah, that kind of says it all about power, particularly with front-wheel drive cars. Overall, I thought the car was really good, and actually another owner has reached out to me to try a standard non-performance pack model, when we've actually arranged something hopefully for January, which I'll share with you, a first drive Q&A, another really passionate owner to hopefully give you a really good insight around these kind of cars. I just love them. I love the GTIs, I love the Rs. They're definitely hugely fantastic cars and worth the name, worth the heritage, if that makes sense. And I certainly wouldn't be disappointed of getting one, put it that way. 100% I'd be happy. And actually I went through a bit of a phase, and I still do, looking at magazines and online reviews on these kind of cars. The 3-door manual Golf 7.5 Performance Pack, or just standard GTI, was actually on my list to buy. Fundamentally, I was actually priced out because GTIs have been so well heard of for the last 45 years, basically. They've been knocking around, whereas the R is very, very new. It's sort of really only been knocking around the last decade. It meant that GTIs command a bit of a premium, and that is just where it was. So actually, for a 3-door manual GTI, and as a subscriber rightly pointed out to me, they're very well optioned as well. They're very highly spec'd. You get, like, I think reversing camera is standard even. Certainly all the ones that I've seen have. You obviously get the digital cockpit, you get a few assists and stuff like that. It's very, very well spec'd, and that obviously increases the price as well. But that's ultimately what put me off, because for an extra fair amount of power, more traction over the wet conditions. I've been so fortunate that all my first drives have just been sunny, beautiful days, to be honest with you, or certainly clear days, which we don't get often in the UK. So that was great to sort of try and find out. I definitely think if you watch this and you want just a normal car for everyday use, this is perfect. 18-inch wheels, no DCC. For the GTIs, I wouldn't even recommend it. I think it's more than comfortable enough. I don't know how much more comfortable you can get. Like, I've driven, like, the TCR Performance Pack had DCC, Golf 8R had DCC, the Club Sport 45 had DCC. All of those in their softest setting was still harder than this car, obviously on its passive settings, just to give you an idea. So potentially saving money on that front. So that was really, really cool, and something that you just learn from all this sort of testing out. I can't thank people enough for being able to try all these cars this year. Since about sort of February, April, it's been fantastic, and the opportunities. I'll be forever grateful from you guys. I really, really will. I can't say that enough, and hopefully I can use what I've learned in this year to help you out and give you some advice and give you my honest opinion. I do love these cars, and I'm happy to sort of share both sides of it, how I feel. But for me, I really think it's a great car. I really, really do. I suppose from being fortunate enough to be in a Mark 7 Golf R for the last 4.5 years, I would miss the 60 brake horsepower, 65 brake horsepower. There were times when you just want that sort of push your head back a little bit. And obviously in the wet, I love my R. I've done some wet drives in the car, and it's been fantastic. And ultimately, a front wheel drive car, you're just not going to get that sort of ability from it. And also, when you're in the wet, it tends to be quite cold, so the tyres are cold, which makes it even more difficult for a front wheel drive car. But I still love it, and I could only recommend it. And as the owner quite rightly pointed out, these cars are better to insure, cheaper in sort of like, I'd say cheaper in servicing with a pinch of salt, because fundamentally, it's the same EA888 engine. You're not really going to be saving that much. The only real thing you'll be saving off is like the Haldex service, to be honest with you. I've got, unfortunately, it looks like I need to replace my clutch in my Mark 7 Golf R manual. A lot of my subscribers reached out to me and other people and sort of said that from my last drive, as I noticed a little bit of an issue. Clutches are a little bit weak, and actually even on the GTIs they're a little bit weak because they use the same type of clutch. So it's like, when things need to get replaced, the labour and actually getting stuff done, there's not much difference for a GTI and an R, in my opinion and in my experience. But yes, there are other costs where fuel, for example, you could get 50 miles per gallon out of this, I have no doubt. Whereas in my car, you would struggle a little bit more. Fantastic car, a little bit more nimbler in the corners as well, which was nice, just that extra lightweight. Nice infotainment, the 7.5 dash. Don't feel like you're missing out from what you see in the Mark 8s. Very modern, very not out of date, if that makes sense. You could have this for another 3-4 years and not feel like you're behind the times. Whereas potentially with my Mark 7, it's physical dial, so it's not too bad. I love it, but maybe potentially 7.5 might be for you if you still want to stay more modern with the modern tech and everything like that. And it certainly puts a smile on my face because it'll be interesting to see what the Mark 8 is like. An owner has actually reached out to me to try a Mark 8 GTI, a base car, which I'm super excited about because I think that will complete all the kind of Golfs, GTIs and Rs just available really from the 7s and the 8s. I'm really interested to see how that compares to this one as well and sharing it with you. But yeah, there's my thoughts. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. Please check out the clips in the video if you want to know more about this GTI, the Mark 7.5. Supercar, really is, and yeah, loved it, absolutely loved it. And please comment below and I'll for sure help you out as much as I can from the experience that I've gained this year on the channel. And yeah, subscribe for plenty more to come. Cheers guys.